Welcome to Briefest Conspiracy. This week, it's UFOs in the Lake District. So we've had our weekend hiking in the Lake District, and I have to say it's a strange place, particularly for the UK. Lots of rock. It feels old. It feels ancient. These hills have got lots of stories to tell. So, if you're new to our channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and maybe it just helps out. So, Solway Spaceman. This photo, I only really looked this up because I was up in Cumbria last weekend, doing a hike with my mate. The video for which I'll put in the description because you'll see me fall over at least once. As soon as I sort of Googled Cumbria UFOs, just sort of trying to see if there was anything we could talk about to relate to the hike, Solway Spaceman photo came up, and I'd forgotten about this, but I recognised it instantly from my childhood. You know, it was just a little girl in the background with a freaking spaceman over her shoulder.
Yeah.
Jim Templeton was taking his family out to Burr Marsh in 1964. It was an innocent day trip with him and his kids. And then he decided to take a picture of his daughter. A picture that he had no idea at the time would then go global. As far as they knew, nobody else was with them. There were no other people on that marsh. But when the photo came back from the developers, there was the Solway Spaceman. A lot of people who've interviewed Jim, Mr. Templeton, believe him. They believe that he was genuine. He did come out with some other things. He actually said the men in black turned up and took him, and they made him take them to where the photo was taken. So, I mean, I'm not sure I believe that as much as I believe him that it feels like this became a worldwide phenomenon, and it became like really, I mean, it was front page news. It went viral before there was a viral internet, you know, for things to go on. Mm-hmm. And maybe he then sort of milked it a little bit.
Maybe. I suppose you've got to think that a lot of people are opportunistic and would take advantage of a situation if they can see pound signs by it. In any way, shape or form, yeah.
In the 60s, were the men in black a thing? I know in the 80s they really did become these men in black being seen around UFO sightings, or people that had been taken, or people that were investigating UFOs. All of a sudden the men in black would turn up in these fedoras and things. But was that a thing in 1964?
I don't know. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe not in this country, but
yeah,
perhaps in America it was. I think the Majestic 12. Just so many of how many of these stories where people in suits turn up, confiscate the evidence, tell you to never tell anyone again, and disappear.
Yeah,
and that seems to be a very common
to happen
theme.
A lot, doesn't it?
I'm not. The CIA probably do have a part of doing that. That's, I think, seems to be their modus operandi. And whether there's actually
and they actually always do wear black as well. So
they always wear black suits, don't they? Black sunglasses. So yeah, they kind of fit the. Yeah,
we'll have to watch Dan Aykroyd's video again, won't we, about when he talks about how he was he actually saw them once.
Yeah.
But, took another twist, this story, this Solway Spaceman thing, when in the Cumbrian region at the time was where we were developing the Blue Streak missile system, which was the British attempt at a ballistic missile system. The actual technology was then used to launch satellites later. So, for political reasons, we ended up going with American systems, which happens quite a lot. But apparently it was a really effective system. And it was... the Spadadam test range in Cumbria was only a few miles from Solway. That's also where they were building these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of them was then sent to Australia, and they were doing a test. And literally about 2 weeks after this photo was taken, the test was then cancelled in the last minute because 2 people were seen on the test range. Now, according to some investigators, engineers on that who saw these 2 figures then saw the Solway Spaceman photo and went, it was him. They identified this figure as being the same as the people that stopped the test.
It's quite mad, yeah.
So for some reason, people in spacesuits seem to be wanting to stop us from testing the Blue Streak missile.
Which is interesting. So what the Blue Streak was what intercontinental ballistic missile?
It was a medium to short range ballistic missile.
Range.
The idea was we could launch it and hit Russia from where we are.
I mean, there is again, when it comes to nuclear installations and nuclear tests, and there are some very, very credible people out there that are. There's, for example, there's one gentleman in the UFO Disclosure Project that Dr. Stephen Greer talks about, where they're involved in the testing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. And the UFO flew in from above, zapped it, went in front of it, zapped it, went behind it, zapped it, below it, zapped it, and then the missile just fell out the sky.
Just broke up.
And it zipped off. And the people that were watching the footage of this, I think they had probably having what was it they do? They have jet fighters, don't they? Following the missiles.
Tracking
them. And videotaping it, and they were seeing on the videotapes from the accompanying military personnel this unidentified flying metallic object fly in, zap it a few times, and then it drops out the air. And these are some of the people that are some of our best scientists working on the latest technology. They're not going to misidentify something.
UFOs and things being in areas where they're doing
nuclear
launches,
military installations,
or
basically.
satellite launches and these sorts of things. They seem to be monitoring. When it comes to us putting anything in space, they seem to be interested to monitor it, or doing anything with nuclear.
Yes, anything
material,
with nuclear.
They seem to be interested
in monitoring it. And there seems to be various stories from various different installations that, or bases that, they can't. These credible people that
the story
got their finger on the nuclear button, basically.
The story we talked about last week, the Lovett Cunningham abduction and human mutilation. Good story. Go back and check that video out. That was in White Sands.
Yep.
White Sands was where the first nuclear testing's done. It was by the missile testing range, and again, it seems to be that UFOs or somebody potentially was very interested in that region, and wanted to do tests that weirdly required them to scoop out his anus, which is I'm not sure what that required.
I'm not sure what that was about.
What the hell is wrong with you aliens? Seriously. There has been a lot of debunking of this photo, don't there, hasn't there, over the years? And even it's been investigated by, and the MOD investigated this as well and said there was no threat. That's why our MOD is really good. They never say, we do not investigate UFOs, we investigate threats, and we haven't found a threat. That doesn't necessarily mean you haven't found any UFOs though either, does it?
No, it's quite clever, yes.
But there has been a lot of debunking that actually they believe this was actually the wife had stepped into the frame, and it was just overexposed. So again, it's old camera technology. She's out of frame slightly.
Yeah, and you can see the reasoning and the logic behind some of the analysis of the picture.
I would say it makes more sense than what looks like a man in what we would consider a spacesuit. How many UFOs have we seen that are in big white spacesuits? It's not a common thing that I'm aware of. Greys coming out, that's fair enough, but how many are in spacesuits? Like
there are some cave paintings that go back like tens of thousands of years that look like people, astronauts in spacesuits. But
okay. But anyway, in the Cumbria region, there's loads of these UFO stories. So it is interesting but it's a very desolate part of the UK. Colbeck, Cumberland, 1954, March 4th. A possible UFO crash? Operation Mariner had apparently been monitoring UFO activity for weeks with the US Navy just off the Irish Sea. According to ufologist Sharon Larkin, she came in contact with 3 people who supposedly witnessed the event. One, a poacher who refused to give his name. Another man who was then detained by the US Army for anything up to 2 weeks. And more sinisterly, a vicar who threatened to go public with what he'd seen, was then found dead. Could this have been the British Roswell, but just better hid? A UFO crash in these hills? Maybe something to do with the Operation Mariner in the Irish Sea? Very limited information about this crash. But you have to wonder, if there was a crash in these hills back in the 50s, wouldn't be difficult to clear up or hide. There's never been any physical evidence found, never been any other witnesses that, and I can't find any of these witnesses' names or first witness testimony.
Yes, it's an incident that's very much lacking any evidence or any strong testimony even.
Cumbria Roswell, I think, is a stretch. Myself.
Yes.
Something maybe happened, but in the height of the Cold War, something could have happened, but it might have been nothing to do. I think maybe...
It doesn't seem like you can draw any conclusions from that event, really. So little to comment on, really, yeah.
There are lots of really good stories, though. One of them was this triangular object was seen in 1977, and we got really lots of nice details. It was a triangular object with two very large lights. It apparently hovered over the A592 road for a long time, was then seen over Morecambe. It apparently was seen by dozens of witnesses, and you can get names, so you can follow this one. 10 of them were police officers who saw this object.
See, that again, we generally collect evidence of that event, so that'd be very interesting where there's a high number of police officers involved.
They're trained to be witnesses, aren't they? Basically, they're trained to do that. So it's interesting that I've gone through hundreds. There are so many. Up until about 2003, they averaged about 60 UFO sightings reported to police, and that's important as well, that people actually bothered reporting it to the police. October 2009, Carlisle. A lady phoned the police reporting that an orange light was hovering above her house. She said it was about the size of a Boeing 747, and when she opened the windows, it made no noise. She was scared enough by this incident to phone the police and report it. You have to wonder how many other incidents happen, though, where nobody reports it to the police. So how much of a hotspot is Cumbria and the Lake District? Out of the several reports to the police that I've read, there seems to be a common theme with a lot of the Cumbrian sightings. An orange light with yellow tints around the edge, like a halo, moving away or towards Carlisle. And a lot of the time, even though the object seems very close to the observer, there's no noise. One of the blokes that we found was, he had an eyewitness, and he's actually used to be RAF, and he said there's no aircraft could travel the way I saw this vehicle moving.
Yes, defying our current understanding of physics and inertia. It's yes, yeah.
So if aliens are going, and if this is one of the hotspots, then what are the potential reasons for them to be in the Lake District area? There's a few theories.
Well, the fact that there's a military base there, and they seem to be interested in these military bases, specifically nuclear or
our biggest
missile,
nuclear
perhaps.
power plants there as well, isn't it? Is there one of the Britain's biggest? And like I say, it's where all of our nuclear weapons were built.
Yep.
So I mean, there's a reason. There's also lots of water. I've seen theories to say that they believe it was to do with because there's so much water, the UFOs are refueling. If they're using some sort of hydrogen-based energy, so that's interesting.
You do see some of these stories, don't you, of these unidentified submersible objects now as well, where sailors, people working at sea, fishermen, they've seen things come out of the water, metallic objects at incredible speeds, and transverse the difference between the water and air as though it's nothing.
It's like it's nothing.
It's just a different medium they're travelling through. Yeah,
lots of lakes are hiding. Windermere is enormous, so we've got to start wondering why they're here. In that case, though, haven't you? So what are they actually doing here? Is it just a spot to stop and refuel? Is it that that's a good place to hide while they're doing whatever experiments or just monitoring us?
You know how when kids are young, they mess about and they play around with things. Perhaps they shouldn't sometimes.
Yeah.
As parents, you watch them and stop them when they're doing something silly.
Stop them when they go too far.
Maybe it's kind of a little bit like that with the alien species that are watching us and interacting with us.
Trying to make sure we don't go too far.
To do what we want, but then they go, they're playing around with nuclear weapons again.
Maybe that's a bit much.
We don't want them to blow the planet up.
It's not like when the little kid appears with matches. No.
Yeah, I almost think it might be a little bit like that.
Bit much.
It's more of they're actually probably, if they wanted to wipe us out, then they're capable of traversing interstellar distances and we're not yet,
They would, yeah.
then they could wipe us out. It's pretty much like any film about us being annihilated as a species when there's a superior race comes in. And if you look what the Western world did to the rest of the world, believing in its own superiority,
the British, we turned up.
It's quite likely, isn't it, that if we're this hostile, that another alien species would also be hostile.
Controlled
in
a
some
quarter
way
of
as
the
well.
planet at one point in the British Empire. Most successful empire in history until the Americans turned up and very quietly created their own empire.
Unless they're so far advanced, to be honest, that they're benevolent and they're watching down at their creations, perhaps.
That's more what I believe. I genuinely believe if aliens are traversing the universe, I don't think life, intelligent life anyway, is going to be that common. You know? So when aliens come across another species, they would be interested. Like how we're interested in the Amazon and wildlife in Africa and things like this. We're interested in things that are different to us, and we want to learn about these things. We want to learn about history and different cultures and stuff like this. I think an alien, probably a UFO, might be the same. They come across things and they just want to learn about us.
They're curious like we are. Like we're curious about learning about different animals and their behaviours. And
when we get to a point where we can actually like accept the bigger universe, when we get to a point, I think it's Star Trek in this thing, when there's the prime directive. You're not allowed to mess around with any lesser culture until they reach warp capacity. As soon as they learn how to traverse warp, then you can talk to them and they can join the Federation. Maybe it's a similar thing. They have to wait for us to get to a point where we won't freak out, and that we're actually at a technological point where we can understand.
It's like in the film with the alien Paul.
Yeah.
And why do you think they've been drip feeding pictures of me on lunchboxes to kids for the last 50 years? So when our species do meet, you don't freak out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just think that's probably so spot on as to what's been going on probably for the last 70 years, since the late 40s, early 50s. We're slowly being drip fed the information. And
slowly.
But the CIA's had a complete counter anything that's about aliens and other species. But eventually all the children are now growing up fully believing in.
I think definitely in the coming weeks we're going to be really getting our teeth stuck into the disclosure projects. I think if we're going to do UFOs, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about the individuals talking about, and that's really when we're going to start talking about how maybe our culture is being aimed towards disclosure.
Yeah. But I don't think, even if it is, I don't think they're ever going to come out and give us direct disclosure and go, guess what, we've been lying for 70 years, we were doing this, we knew this, we did this. That's not going to happen. They're just going to keep drip feeding us little bits of information until they've swayed the public opinion of the populace to 80% plus believes that extraterrestrial beings exist. And yeah, they're just delicately doing that whilst not hammering the religion too hard, I guess.
Exactly. And the other option is they might be that our government will keep it on doing that, like say doing this, what you're saying about drip feeding this information until the aliens decide they're going to. It'll be them that decide when we're ready.
Quite possibly.
And our government will just hold on for as long as it can.
You could argue there's been some instance of notable interest. Was it in the 1940s when they the 7 or 8 UFOs swarmed the White House every Friday for several Fridays going? That could be taken as a very strong signal of them trying to make contact with the leader of our people.
I wonder how much our governments are actually. If this UFO thing is true and UFOs are a thing, they would be in contact with certain elements of the governments. And again, our government won't be in any position. I just think there's two possibilities. Either our government are being told what to do, which is possible. That's because of the X-Files version of events. Or the aliens are coming and our government don't know why and can't do anything about it. And that is actually possibly the scarier of the two.
It's probably the latter, isn't it?
So that's why they won't tell us, and that's why they can't be disclosed.
Yeah, and any information they do have is probably not very substantiated, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Or
all these UFOs keep coming, they won't talk to us.
They have potentially been doing this for 60, 70 years, so they probably do have some tidbits of information that would be
They'll have bits.
They'll have bits, but they're not going to have nothing. They're going to know, if there are different species of aliens visiting us as well, they're going to know, this species is this, they're interested in this. They come here to do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, or
there's
we
this
think
one species
they do
that
this.
are really interested in cows for some reason.
Yeah, and they seem to mutilate them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We can't figure out why still, but
What are they up to, that one?
yeah, you know, I
Yeah,
don't
they
know.
take the odd goat, but they really like cows. Right. So that's where we go, and that's the Solway Spaceman. Just as a final, do you think, is it a photo of a spaceman, or is it a photo of his wife? Which is, I think, they're two main theories.
I don't. It's difficult. I'm torn on this one. Some of the analysis of it makes it look quite like it could just be some kind of trick of photography with an older camera that could be his wife in there with him in the background. On the other hand, why is all of her completely reflective like that? It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one to...
It's a sunny day. It's cameras can be odd. Personally, I don't think this is anything. The Blue Streak connection seems to have been contrived afterwards. I'm not sure about the Man in Black thing, but even though the photo becomes so popular, I do think parts of the MOD, parts of CIA, whatever, would have been interested to at least have a look,
analyse
so
it.
potentially, it's interesting that it becomes so popular. I don't think it was faked. I don't think there's any lying involved. I just think it's just an odd photo, and it's just the wife stood there, I'm afraid. So that's our quick look at that. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Hey, we didn't talk about Corona for 22 minutes. Well done.
Oh, no, that's good, isn't it? It's nice.
If you want to see the video of our hike this weekend and lots of other videos of hikes around the UK, please go to my pal's YouTube channel, Gone Hiking. I will leave a link in the description.